Womanjika everyone, Womanjika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of three families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The three families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover, Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Morley Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Piers Tyson, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council. We aim to get started every second Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. However, sometimes there are some delays behind the scenes that we need to work through, and we appreciate your patience. You can have a look at our agenda online for all the issues that we'll be talking about tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. So every second Tuesday we work through our council agenda, and what that means is working through things from procedural, day-to-day issues, financial reports, all the way up to the most important things in Moonee Valley, in Victoria, or in Australia. And councillors can put up alternatives to that, can put up our staff officers' recommendation, and we can debate that and vote yes or no at the end of the day.
Woman Jika, everyone. Woman Jika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandins. And I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Morley Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Piers Tyson, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council. We aim to get started every second Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. However, sometimes there are some delays behind the scenes that we need to work through, and we appreciate your patience. You can have a look at our agenda online for all the issues that we'll be talking about tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. So every second Tuesday we work through our council agenda, and what that means is working through things from procedural, day-to-day issues, financial reports, all the way up to the most important things in Moonee Valley, in Victoria or in Australia. And councillors can put up alternatives to that, can put up our staff officers' recommendation, and we can debate that and vote yes or no at the end of the day. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council meeting for the 8th of August 2023, which I now declare open at 6:35. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public who have joined us in the gallery this evening, as well as people who are watching at home on our live stream. As well as the live stream, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent during the meeting, and a reminder to the public in the gallery that under Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recording in the chamber of the meeting is not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, elders and community members, past, present and emerging. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence, and welcome back to Councillor Nation after his leave of absence, who's also joining us on Zoom this evening. And I have received a leave of absence request from Councillor Bedio. So councillors, can I please have a mover and seconder that Council grants Councillor Bedio a leave of absence for the period 8th August to the 16th of August inclusive. Moved Councillor Byrne, seconded Councillor Sypek. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, and that's carried unanimously. Item 3 on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on the 25th of July 2023 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, that's carried unanimously. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest they wish to declare this evening? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to declare a material conflict of interest on item 12.1 on the agenda for reasons disclosed in writing to the CEO prior to the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I will declare a general conflict of interest on item 12.1 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO. Are there any other conflicts of interest? If not, we move on to item 5, presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Microphone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to make a presentation on my attendance at the ALGA conference, which yourself and Councillor Isa attended with me. This year, the Australian Local Government Assembly took place in Canberra between the 13th and the 16th of June. I joined Moonee Valley Council Mayor Piers Tyson and Councillor Rose Isa, Corporate Affairs Executive Manager Nicole Laurie, and along with a record crowd of local government leaders, delegates and elected representatives for this event. This was the 29th National General Assembly, which included around 450 delegates across Australia's 537 local governments. On some days there were around over 1,000 people representing local governments in the convention hall. This year's theme was Our Communities, Our Future, and was focused on how local government can better partner with the federal government to deliver a better future for our communities. Our Moonee Valley delegation took the opportunity to strengthen our partnership with the federal government during a meeting at Parliament House with our local member for Maribyrnong, Bill Shorten, who kindly arranged for our group to meet a number of ministers, which was very, very kind of him to do that. In addition to this terrific networking and storytelling and sharing opportunities with other councils, the Assembly also included some significant speakers, including Infrastructure and Local Government Minister Catherine King, who did a great speech. Opposition Leader Peter Dutton provided great information as well, and His Excellency the Governor-General David Hurley. In addition to more than 200 motions for debate, the event also saw the return of the Australian Council of Local Government, which our Mayor and Councillor Isa attended. Of particular interest to me was the exhibition hall, where I was briefed on a number of innovative opportunities for our council's daily task. And this included some innovative bitumen products which I think will greatly work in our network system of roads, and also electric plant and equipment, which is, I think, will be a significant change for us to achieve our carbon reduction. Technology opportunities included engagement tools, and I note Moonee Valley has just introduced a new engagement tool for our Have Your Say site, which will help increase personalisation for residents and increase accessibility to council. ALGA is a very important event on our council calendar. It is part of our joint advocacy with our fellow local governments, and excellent learning and development opportunities, and most importantly, networking events where we can share the best of Moonee Valley and also learn from other councils what they do well in their communities, and that we could probably use in Moonee Valley. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek, and that was a great report back. Thank you. Are there any other presentations? If not, I'll move on to item 6, petitions and joint letters. Councillors, are there any petitions or joint letters? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Mayor. Council's received a joint letter with 32 signatures from traders in the Centreway Keilor East objecting to the Parklet program. It details that a majority of the traders do not want the Parklet program to operate in the Centreway.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. Are there any other petitions or joint letters? If not, we move on to public question time, item 7, and we've got one this evening from Ian Woods, who is not joining us this evening, so I'll read out Ian's question. The findings by the Victorian State's Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission regarding the activities of a couple of City of Casey councillors and others and their relationship with the developer raised some important issues regarding local government matters. Do any MVCC councillors and senior executives receive financial and non-financial support, including gifts from developers, advisors to development projects, real estate agents and similar parties? If yes, how has this been documented and made available to the public? I'll refer Ian's question to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Ian. Through the Mayor, the Local Government Act 2020 and Council's Council Law Gift Policy govern how councillors should treat gifts, benefits and hospitality. Any declared non-token gifts received or declined by councillors are recorded on Council's Gifts and Hospitality Register, which is published on Council's website. Moonee Valley's Staff Code of Conduct requires staff not to seek gifts, benefits, and hospitality for themselves or for others that could reasonably be perceived as influencing them or undermining the integrity of the organization or themselves. I confirm that no executive team members has made declaration that they received any financial or non-financial support, including gifts from developers, advisors to development projects, or real estate agents. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Item 8 is reports from delegates. Councillors, are there any reports in your responsibilities as delegates? If not, we move on to item 9, reports, and item 9.1 is 376 to 378 Pascoe Road, Strathmore, parentheses lot 1, 2 and 3 TP 590642Y and lots 1, 2 and 3 TP 836044E. Construction of a multi-storey building, use of the land for dwellings, a reduction in car parking requirements, and alteration of access to a road in a transport zone 2. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please.
Yes.
The amendment is to 10J and reads the provision of new street tree planting and/or urban planter boxes/pots within the road reserve adjacent to the site, in brackets, while also considering view lines for vehicles exiting Wallace Crescent, end of brackets, in appropriate locations in consultation with the responsible authority.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp, and the rest to remain the same? Yes, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adams.
Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. All three ward councillors, Buckley ward councillors, attended the consultation meeting on this development a little while ago. It is situated on Pascoe Road, on the corner of Pascoe Road and Wallace Crescent. It's at the end of the commercial zone of Pascoe Road, and it's close to the overpass there near Strathmore Secondary College and the like. It is a slightly difficult block, so to speak, but on balance, I'm happy to support the development. There is a mezzanine level, noting that it says it's going to 8 stories. There's a mezzanine level, which means it technically is lower than the 8, and there is precedent of 8 stories on the corner of Pascoe Road and Woodland Street, which is yet to be constructed, but that has a permit for that. So based on those facts around the site and surrounding area, I'm happy to support the permit as granted in these the officer's response tonight. The addition to a couple of words adding to 10J is just a point made, which Councillor Adams picked up on, that exiting onto Pascoe Road from Wallace Crescent can be problematic. So those few words added will hopefully ensure that the sight lines for cars exiting or entering, mainly exiting, onto Pascoe Road, the sight lines remain clear to enable traffic to flow easily, and obviously, to not hinder traffic flow or anything like that, and safety, of course, is paramount. So, yeah, happy to support it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Sharp, for those comments. I agree. This one has been a tricky one. This particular location has been screaming for attention for a long time. It's an area that is flagged for development because it's on a main road and close to public transport, but it also fronts a really lovely pocket of Strathmore that neighbours the Moonee Ponds Creek, and so the impact on the residents in this area is important in our decision making. And I know that officers have worked really hard with the applicant to address objectors' concerns and to ensure that a net community benefit is achieved. The obvious concern is the height of this development, as Councillor Sharp has said. There are no preferred or mandatory building heights, as the site and broader neighbourhood activity centre are not subject to specific urban design or built form guidelines, a structure plan or any planning controls that might provide further guidance on suitable heights. While the plans show us Part 7, Part 8 storey building, the slope of the land, the raised overpass, the hidden contained mezzanine level and recessed upper level makes the development largely look like a 6-storey building. So I think all in all, the development will add value to the streetscape and help to define this particular intersection. And for traffic and pedestrian safety in this area, I think that is a good outcome. The amendment to it ensure that no street trees are planted within the nature strip or consideration be given to sight lines is to address concerns with view lines for vehicles at the intersection of Pascoe Road and Wallace Crescent. I think the trees obstructing sight lines and the curve of the building, these concerns are addressed, so I'm comfortable with that. I'm also pleased that part of the endorsed conditions, there is provision of an increased setback at the ground level to widen the rear laneway to ensure two-way traffic movements. I also like the greenery on balconies on each level, and having a bike shop and cafe in this location is perfect as it neighbours the Moonee Ponds Creek Trail. I guess with this application, it's a case of better the devil you know. The risk with refusing this one is that it goes to VCAT, and we could end up with a worse outcome because of the lack of planning controls around here. In saying that, I will foreshadow an alternative motion that addresses the height if the officer's recommendation doesn't get up.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, as has been spoken about, it is a site that I think is warrants development, and obviously it's in a commercial one zone. It does, I think, differ a little bit from the corner of Pascoe Road and Woodland Street intersection in that it has an interface with a residential, with residential properties. And as such, the height is something that I think is a bit of a concern. I note though that if we work to consider removing any of the levels, it would probably be from the residential part, and we do have, we do want to encourage housing in the city, and it is one of those spots, very close to a train station and on a main road that you do want to encourage slightly higher density. I'm a bit, in two minds about this one. I think the height is not ideal, and I'd probably prefer to see it a little bit lower. But I do note, that the lack of some clear guidelines around height controls in the area does make it tricky for us to assess, what is an appropriate height there. I suppose I'm sort of reserving my decision to hear a bit more debate if colleagues have anything more to say, but I think it's definitely an interesting application. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa?
Just to note that I note that Councillor Adams has foreshadowed an alternative, and I think I prefer the sound of the alternative. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? As there has been some dissent, I'll ask Councillor Sharp whether she would like to close.
Thank you, Mayor. Close, well, I guess I do understand if councillors have concerns about the height, but I think our officers have certainly worked with the applicant in order to alleviate the concerns that have been raised with objectors. There is a laneway to the back of this development, so the residential development isn't abutting the rear of this dwelling. There is a laneway that goes through St Wallace Crescent right through to Woodland Street. So it's certainly not a sheer wall that is right next to the residential interface. Either way, I guess the land is sloping at this site as well, which has to be taken into account, and that's where I guess the Part 7, Part 8 story comes into it because of that slope, because they've actually factored in a mezzanine level, which I believe is for storage and the like for the retail component of the businesses. So I think our officers and the applicant have worked to achieve a development that I guess is maximising what they can do, as every development I guess does, whilst also considering the concerns within the local area. But I think the fact that there is the laneway behind needs to be factored in. The slope of the land needs to be considered, has been considered.
20-second extension.
Oh, sorry, am I up? Well, that's okay. I can leave it there.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Sharp, Sypek, and Tyson. All those against? Councillor Isa and Councillor Nation. I declare that carried. And we now move on to item 9.2, response to notice of motion number 2021/34, Scout Hall audit. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. This report was deferred from a couple of meetings ago to garner some more information. I believe that information has been received and further issues have been resolved. Hence, I'm happy to support the recommendation here that has been put forward by officers. Thank you.
Councillor Sharp. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'd just add, in rereading the report, there's a section 5 in our reports about relationship to council commitments, plans, policies and decisions, and it's quite an extensive one here. So just a shout out to the Scouts who do a lot of work that obviously aligns very closely with the work that council tries to do in the community, including in particular providing recreation options for children and young people who are not necessarily sport inclined. I think it's really great what they do, and I acknowledge that, you know, the options analysis sends us down a path in our partnership with Scouts that, you know, differs a little bit from the historical model of how Scouts have operated, but hopefully, you know, we continue to have a really great relationship with the local Scouts and continue to see Scouting thrive in Moonee Valley for a long time to come.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Isa, Sharp, Nation, Sypek, Tyson. All those against? Councillor Byrne. I declare that carried. We now move on to item 9.3, adoption of the public memorial policy and place naming policy. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Happy to endorse the public memorial policy and place naming policy, noting that these two policies will replace the existing single place naming and civic recognition policy, allowing for a clearer separate framework for each. So these policies have come to us following a period of community engagement that ran for 30 days to the 23rd of April 2023. I'm pleased to see that the feedback received has been included in the amended draft policies. The two policies have been strengthened and improved through this consultation process, so I want to thank our community for their valued contribution. In particular, I'm pleased to see more detail and clarity in the public memorial policy. The policy includes an additional criteria that allows circumstances to be considered by council where an application doesn't quite meet the other criteria and can still be considered on compassionate grounds. The organisation has received multiple requests for plaques and memorials to place in our public spaces, and so this will give us an option to consider these type of requests which some Moonee Valley families make that is not available under the current policy. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just really quickly to add my thanks to the people who responded to the open feedback on the policies, to thank Councillor Adams for originally bringing the notice of motion to review the policy. I think that the review has resulted in a strengthening of the way that we do public memorials and also place naming, and to see the separation of those two things. And to reiterate thanks to officers for responding so fulsomely to that feedback that was provided by the many people who responded to the Your Say opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak? I will put that to the vote just in 1 second. I might just see. That's all right, Councillor Sharp. So I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 9.4 is Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Planning and Environment Act 1987. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Byrne.
No, I don't need to speak on it. Thank you.
No worries. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be really quick. This one is an anomaly in the Planning and Environment Act that requires delegations to be specifically name the authorised officer. Most of our delegations are just to the CEO and subsequent delegations made then. But yeah, so with a new member of staff to name in our delegations, we're passing this report tonight, hopefully.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 10 is notices of motion, and we have 3 on tonight's agenda. 10.1 is, I'll call on Councillor Isa to present her notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2023/26, Anonymous Misinformation.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to A, note the incorrect information with respect to Moonee Valley City Council posted on 28th of June and 1st of July 2023 by the anonymous authors of a campaign entitled Fight for Essendon, and the lack of authorisation of associated posts and profiles in various social and print media. B, write to the Victorian Electoral Commission with respect to the lack of authorisation required by Section 83 of the Electoral Act 2002 by the anonymous campaign entitled Fight for Essendon. C, note the opportunity to make submissions to the draft communications legislation amendment combating misinformation and disinformation, close brackets, Bill 2023, regarding powers to combat anonymous misinformation such as that allegedly published by Fight for Essendon, and there's a reference URL there if it's okay just to not read that out. And D, write to the E-Safety Commissioner and the Federal Minister for Communications, the Honourable Michelle Rowland MP, conveying Council's experience with and seeking further advice on combating anonymous online misinformation about Council.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Just double checking something, apologies. Governance, if something in D can just be corrected in that the comma is in the incorrect spot at the end. Seeking further advice on, I believe, would be where the comma is. Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. This motion is about an anonymous online campaign against Council, and I've brought this motion because the campaign has contained misinformation and has brought councillors and council into disrepute. Primarily, though, I've brought this motion because the campaign is anonymous. This motion is not to dissuade anyone from participating in free and robust democratic debate. Anonymous trolling is not democratic debate, it's abuse, and I will always call out abuse. There are sometimes good reasons to remain anonymous. Dissidents in an authoritarian regime who may face death for their views need to protect their identity. Whistleblowers who might lose their job or face criminal prosecution deserve protection. But the use of anonymity to spread misinformation, to troll, to harass, to defame people cannot be defended. Anonymous online campaigns cause real harm. Anonymous campaigns can be dangerous to Australian democracy because democracy depends on transparency, accountability and fact. Democracy doesn't exist in the shadows of sock puppet accounts. disinformation campaigns, online astroturfing, or what Facebook has termed coordinated inauthentic behaviour. The campaign that's the subject of this motion has posted misinformation about council. Interestingly, one of these posts has been taken down since Friday, the one that wrongly stated something about council's fees. Another post with incorrect information about increases to council's rates, however, remains. Deliberately distorting the truth about rates and fees brings council into disrepute and causes anxiety for residents. This is how disinformation campaigns work. And the heart of the problem here is that this is anonymous. It's bad that there's trolling of council's social media. It's bad that there's negative posting about myself, poking fun at my panic attacks and smearing of other councillors. But it's worse that the author or authors won't own it. The Electoral Act in Victoria requires authorisation of electoral matter, and this requirement exists precisely to avoid this kind of anonymous and unaccountable campaigning. There's also work being done at the federal level to combat false information online. Both major parties are concerned that tech platforms are not doing enough to stop online misinformation that harms democracy. A draft bill aiming to combat misinformation would give ACMA stronger policing powers. A Senate committee looking at foreign interference through social media has called for better transparency rather than censorship, and that's exactly what this motion is focused on. The chair of that committee, Senator James Paterson, recommends that tech platforms should have to inform about the origin and the intent of content so that we can make up our minds about its merits. We don't know the author of this social media campaign, and so we don't know who or what is behind it or their agenda. The author of the site has sent me a number of messages, some malicious, that tell me something. They've said that they want to run against me at the next election, that they want to campaign on council's faults, but also on their own good work, that they want to campaign at the state election, and that they've also wrongly accused me of having a go at them and at my colleagues. They've alternated between referring to themselves as I and we, but I don't get the sense from any of their messages to me that this is more than one or a couple of individuals. It bears similarities to the deceptive tactic of astroturfing, which is the use of fake grassroots activism to create the impression that views have widespread public support. Astroturfing was referred to by IBAC in the Sandon report, where a group was set up that had a facade of independence, but was found to have concealed connections to key players with interests in council decision-making. IBAC said in that case, the lack of transparency undermined the integrity of decision-making. As a councillor, I own up and front up to everything I say and do. That's how trust in government is maintained. Anonymous campaigns and anonymous misinformation is dishonest, deceptive, and has no place in Moonee Valley.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Isa. Look, I don't have much to add here. I share Councillor Isa's concern just about the anonymity of the account and the campaign. I think, we've seen in democracies around the world how social media, there's difficulty in being able to decide what information you take on board and how you assess information, and anonymity makes that particularly difficult when people are accessing information through social media. So for that reason and the others that Councillor Isa's detailed, I'm happy to support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Just let you know I'll abstain from the vote because I haven't been in the country, and therefore whatever's being referred to, I'm not across any of it. So my hand will just stay down, and I might not even abstain. I might just remove myself from the vote. So apologies to the mover of the motion and councillors, but I'm just completely not across what all the issues is. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand and agree with pretty much everything that Councillor Isa has said. But for me, I think, for me, this to a degree is or could be classed as censorship, and I don't think we're elected officials, yes, but I don't think we should be censoring anybody. And I haven't really followed this page myself and really looked at what they've said or what they've said or what they haven't said. But I will say this, I guess. All of us are across various different pages and various different Facebook groups, and I'm literally trying to find some screenshots that I know that I took quite recently, but I can't find them, of course, because I'm looking for them, I can't find them. But basically, I remember putting up an urgent business item not long ago, but I can't quite think of exactly what it was regarding. I think it was to do with, it might have been to do with Queengrove Master Plan maybe. Anyway, I can't remember what exactly it was, but I read some comments posted by individuals who were completely and utterly factually incorrect, that stated that, no, actually it was about the J.H. Allen. It was about J.H. Allen Reserve, when I put the notice of the urgent business item up for that, to incorporate the consultation on the extra pitch there, the proposed extra pitch that was in the soccer strategy. So I saw some pretty crude, rude comments about that, and I know who put them up, but, because they're not faceless, it doesn't mean that they're correct, and it doesn't mean that exactly what Councillor Isa has described does not apply to those people as well. So if we're going to target a group such as Fight for Essendon, that I think we probably need to do this all round and target the people that put inaccurate and unfactual posts on social media. Because there was a lot of stuff going around about the J.H. Allen soccer pitch that I saw, and it was absolutely and utterly incorrect. So I don't know why. I'm happy to, go along these lines, but we need to do it holistically, I think. And just because Fight for Essendon, we might not know who the person is behind it, that doesn't give right for a person that puts a post up in their own name to lie and be factually incorrect either.
30-second extension.
So, like I said, I'm happy to do this if it's holistically, but unfortunately this is only targeting one group, and I'd have quite a number of groups in my head if I wanted to go down this track. So I probably can't support this now because it is not holistic, and I'm not going to target one group or individual, whoever it is, and not target others that might not be spaceless but are still doing exactly the same thing.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We as elected officials put our name up to run for council every 4 years. And every 4 years, how much misinformation gets put out during the election campaign? Do we censor them? No, I don't think so. I've learned over the years that this is going to happen. You shut this site down, they're just going to bring up another site or another site after that. So how many times are we going to repeat this? And I think Councillor Sharp made a very good point. We have to do this holistically. If we want to do this fair and equitably, we need to then target everyone who complains about council. Do we want to do that? I don't think so. Because you know what, Mr Mayor, sometimes criticism is good. Sometimes criticism makes you reflect. Sometimes criticism makes you think, oh, maybe I am wrong. I'm only human. I'm not perfect all the time. And, if someone's put out some misinformation about you, you've got to have a bit of a thick skin, Mr Mayor. You can't just, run and try and censor everyone. I mean, we are in a democracy here and everyone's got freedom of speech. And, and if it's factually incorrect, well, it's factually incorrect. The people that know you, the people that know who you are, they know it's probably incorrect. And I really don't see a problem with this unless it's, absolutely defamatory and, then there's legal proceedings after that. But, I mean, if you all remember in our primary school days in playground, how many times were you vilified on the playground in the sandpit? It's a fact of life. I agree with Councillor Sharp. We should do this. If you're going to do this, you do it right across the board, not just target one group.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I must admit I'm probably getting a little bit confused just based on what people have said around the table. From where I'm reading it, I obviously read Councillor Isa's motion, and then Councillor Isa spoke on the motion, and from what I took out of that, Councillor Isa's main concern was probably more of it being anonymous, that people can sort of say what they want to say, but you've got to have a name or something behind it. And then what I could hear from sort of Councillor Sharp and Councillor Sypek was that, well, people, even if they're not anonymous, are saying all sorts of things and getting facts wrong, but I don't necessarily think that that was what Councillor Isa was particularly speaking on. But then when you go back to the motion for A, which is noting the incorrect information, I can sort of see where Councillor Sharp and Sypek were coming from, because the first one is about noting the incorrect information. So it's sort of going around in circles. I'm not really sure necessarily where it lands. I'm probably hesitant to support this. I can see pros and cons. I think that it probably is too targeted towards fight for Essendon. Maybe it would have been better to maybe get a report back to see how we could advocate as a council to improve some of this area. I'm also mindful, Councillor Isa pointed out, that one of the posts has been deleted, and I think the other one is up there. In terms of numbers, like how many times even around this chamber have we interpreted reports differently? So I don't think we can necessarily blame a community member or members. For the record, I've got no idea who Fight for Essendon is. Like if we're getting things confused, we've got differing opinions of how we read the same sentence, then a community member obviously can have the same different interpretation, especially if it was in regards to reading budget papers where there's a whole lot of numbers on a whole lot of different things. So, look, I've had a look at their page. They've popped up a few times. I think there's been various things from council meetings that have been shared on there. I think that it is unfortunately, these pages do pop up. I think it would be nice if they had their name against it. But I think that probably supporting this motion without having some sort of a report back with some more information on a broader scale, I probably would have preferred. But I'm not sure if Councillor Adams is speaking, and I'll also be interested to hear Councillor Isa's close in regards to how this one goes. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Adams, you're the only councillor who hasn't spoken. Would you like to speak?
I will, thanks, Mayor. Look, just on principle, I think I'll support this motion, just based on the anonymity aspect of it. So I think I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Isa, would you like a right of reply?
Thanks for the debate around the chamber, and this is the kind of debate that democracy is based on. Civil debate where we're actually identified and responsible and accountable for our views. And Councillor Byrne was right in pointing out that the heart of this motion, and what I was at pains to emphasise, is that we have here a platform that's put itself out in 7 different types of media: billboard, flyers, posters, and 3 different online social media platforms, without any indication of identification. So not any form of being able to be held responsible or accountable for the contribution to democracy, and that is the key issue. This is absolutely not about censorship. This is about making sure that information that's put to people to persuade them on how they vote in whether it's council elections or state elections, it can be assessed. And as the chair of the Senate committee put so well, if you can't trace the origin, if you can't trace information to the origin or to its agenda and its motives, you don't know how to assess that information, and that's the key issue here. If there's a keenness for a report to come back, I'm quite happy to bring another motion next meeting that looks at a wider report on this issue because it is such an important one. We're looking at how anonymity here has been weaponised against council and against council's reputation, and I think every one of us around the table has a responsibility as a director of this council to make sure that our reputation is not mistreated in this way. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll put
Mayor,
that.
can you please consider splitting the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Can I ask for clarification as to what you would like split?
So I suppose probably maybe just split them A, B, C and D might be easiest. Would you like to know the intention? Is that what you're asking? I suppose for me, I'm trying to split out the bits that are more the anonymous bits or the bits talking about it being incorrect information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Byrne. I'll consider that for a few moments. Councillor Byrne, I've considered your request. As A and B note anonymity in those parts, but C and D weren't addressed in debate, I would think that there's no need to split the motion, but I've considered it. Thank you. So I'll put that motion in its entirety to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, and Councillor Nation. An abstention. Thank you. On the casting vote of the Mayor, I declare that motion carried. We now move on to 10.2, and I call on Councillor Hodgson to present her notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2023/27, First People's Motion to MAV State Council.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to submit the following motion to the MAV State Council to be held on Friday the 13th of October 2023. That the MAV, 1, assists in the promotion of the Magalee website, there's a URL link there, and resources to the MAV membership. 2, through the Magalee partnership, help produce model policies and best practice guidelines on local government changes relating to issues affecting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with statewide relevance, consistent with the treaty negotiation framework, self-determination and state government policy and legislation. 3, establish a relationship with the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria as the lead body for negotiating statewide treaty, to keep the membership informed of progress of treaty negotiations, and in particular where treaty outcomes may involve local government in their implementation. And this part, differs from the agenda. 4, request the Victorian Government involve local government as early as possible in designing a treaty implementation program aimed at supporting positive local outcomes.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson, and I'll point councillors to the additional information pack for that additional point 4, and I'll just ask governance as well to ensure consistency in capitalisation and word hyphenation and the like through the motion as well. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, the idea for this motion came after last meeting's report on the state's public intoxication reforms, for which we'd originally asked for an update on the implementation of a recommendation of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, which involves local government, and that was about consulting with Aboriginal legal services and Victoria Police on local government public drinking laws. And obviously, you know, Moonee Valley does some incredible work where industry leaders in the sector on reconciliation, and we've received the Magali Award, in fact, for our work on this. But it struck me that, you know, as strong as our relationships are and as far along the journey of reconciliation as we are, some other local governments have not progressed as far, and I thought it would be time to seek through MAV as our peak body a little bit of additional advocacy and support for local governments who are wanting to progress this work. So the Magali website is a website that was produced by Reconciliation Victoria. MAV was involved in this, and it seeks to support engagement and partnerships between local government and Aboriginal communities. It's a great resource and one that I think that we can call on MAV to promote a little bit more actively. And for those issues like the one I outlined at the beginning that have statewide relevance and would benefit from a consistent statewide application, I think we can seek MAV's support in working on those. It turned my mind to treaty as well, and we know that with you know, a lot of agreements that state government entered, there's a lot of work happening in the space of both state and federal government around voice and treaty. And we know that local government is always called upon as an implementation partner for state and federal initiatives. And so the the third and fourth points really call on MAV as the peak body, but also the Victorian government to involve local government in those discussions and conversations around treaty as early as possible, so that we can be a part of part of those discussions on how to achieve the best positive local outcomes. Hopefully my colleagues around the table will support this, as it's a requirement of our governance rules to have any motions that we want to submit to MAV State Council approved by resolution of Council. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks very much to Councillor Hodgson for putting the work in towards putting this together so that we can take it to the MAV State Council on the 13th of October this year, should it pass the chamber tonight. The MAV board have taken a look at this and have obviously given some feedback and also congratulated Councillor Hodgson on the work that she's put in to put this motion together, and look forward to it coming to the State Council. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next item, 10.3, according to our Governance Rule 30, is a motion I would like to move. So I will vacate the chair and ask Deputy Mayor Byrne to take my place. Thank you. I think I've left everything there for you. I'll take the water.
You take that place.
Rightio. I would like to call on Councillor Tyson to present his notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2023-28, Parking at Niddrie Central.
Thank you, Chair. I move that Council resolves to A, note Council's service agreement with Niddrie Central Shopping Centre regarding recent parking enforcement changes in 2023, including licence plate camera recognition technology to monitor compliance. B, note any feedback provided to council and or councillors from the community, businesses and their employees. C, present a report back to a future council meeting as soon as practical on the current car parking service agreement with Niddrie Central Shopping Centre, including options regarding a 3-hour parking limit, ceasing enforcement after 8 p.m, and the majority of traders receiving at least 2 permits for parking. D, the report should also examine the option of terminating the agreement and its implications.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Chair, and forgive any difficulties I have in moving a motion, as it's been quite a while. Thank you, Councillor Sypek, for seconding the motion. This really comes back to probably about 4 to 6 months ago. Council entered into a service agreement with the landlord of Niddrie Central to monitor and enforce car parking requirements. As councillors, particularly Councillor Byrne and Councillor Sypek, know as local ward councillors, as well as Councillor Sharp, who previously represented that area of Rosehill Ward. Councillors know that this has been extremely unpopular in the community, as well as with businesses in Niddrie Central, and has caused quite a bit of distress in the community. There's been quite a lot of what I would say is misunderstanding of Council's role in this. Council did not request this service agreement. Council does not set the rules of a service agreement, and ultimately I believe that Council is suffering quite a bit of reputational damage due to this current change. What it really boils down to is currently parking is enforced for 2-hour periods per day. This has been particularly difficult for employees of Niddrie Central, as well as traders in the local area. And it's come, I think, quite at the expense of business in the area. Businesses have reported to me at least a 10% drop in turnover recently, and anyone that I've spoken to doesn't agree with the current changes that were implemented a few months ago. I've really attempted in good faith to contact the landlord of Niddrie Central. However, I don't feel that conversations were productive to the extent that the community and businesses would be happy. A secondary, well, I'll go through the points that I raised. I've touched on the parking limit. I believe that 3 hours would be a reasonable compromise for the community from 2 hours. Ceasing enforcement after 8 p.m. is really about parents who have raised concerns, safety concerns for young employees of Safeway, Woolworths. I'll never recognise that name change, but that centre closes quite late, particularly Woolworths, and young employees from the age of 14 to 18, particularly young women, it's quite unsafe to be leaving a shopping centre at 10 p.m. at night. Whether real or perceived, we should be supporting young women and families in underground parking close to their place of work, where they don't have to walk 500 metres to a kilometre in the dark in the middle of the night. As well, the final point that I put in the motion was around the majority of traders receiving at least 2 permits for parking. There's currently what seems to be quite irregular permits that are issued to businesses and to traders in the shopping centre. I've sort of seen reports of 1 to 4 per business. It doesn't seem to be regulated in a consistent manner, and where we have several fresh food businesses in that centre, from a fruit shop to fish, meat, all these sort of things, in a bakery where people might start work at 3, 4 in the morning, be open till 6 or 7 at night. There's usually at least more than one person doing that shift, I would hope. If someone's working 16, 17 hours, it's probably not very productive of them, and usually families are working together with 2 different vehicles, and they're receiving a lot of fines. One business owner who approached me said that they'd received 4, I believe, in a week and a half. And really, I think we're punishing small business at a time of runaway inflation and where we should really be supporting them as much as we can. Niddry Central is somewhat special to me. It's where I had my first job as a trolley boy at 14 and 9 months, advertised in the school bulletin, and I was the first of my friends to get a job. And I later worked in the fruit shop there as well. So I think we should absolutely be doing more to support that business community and those locals. So I hope councillors will support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Sypek. No? Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, and thanks, Deputy Mayor. And thank you to Councillor Tyson for moving this motion and taking a great interest in Buckley Ward. I think this might be right on the corner of Buckley Ward. Look, my fundamental issue with not this motion but the setup here in general is that I do not think it should be council's remit to run parking areas on behalf of private businesses and to enforce parking fines on traders or residents/users on land that is not council land. If someone decides to park, overstay illegally on private land, that is an issue for the person and the owner of the private land. It is not an issue for council to get involved, but we are involved because we're in this agreement. We've got a similar one with Woolworths down in Pratt Street. And it puts us in a very awkward position because we get stuck like we are now trying to dictate what the rules are about parking in a private area because we have worked our way into a relationship because we're making money and getting revenue through enforcing parking. So I have a fundamental issue with the arrangement here and any arrangement where we are enforcing parking restrictions that are not on roads and are not in council-owned public car parks. So, Deputy Mayor, I might consider an amendment here to actually do a deep dive into how many of these relationships we have and whether or not it is the community's expectation that we are giving out parking fines on privately owned land. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No?
Mayor, I'll, if I may, seek an adjournment for 2 minutes to prepare a motion in writing in the form of an amendment.
That's fine. We'll come back at 7:40. Thank you. Everyone, we will reopen the meeting. It is 7:47. Sorry for the slight delay of coming back. Now, before we adjourned, we were at Councillor Nation, and Councillor Nation was proposing to move an amendment. So I will throw back to Councillor Nation. Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Byrne. I'd like to move an amendment which is the insertion of a new point E, which reads, request the CEO bring a report back to Council detailing the locations where Council is currently enforcing parking on privately owned land, the benefits to Council and the owner of the land of such a relationship, how the relationship is established and the terms of agreement governing this relationship, how users of these privately owned car parks are made aware of this arrangement when using the car parks, whether there are different rules relating to the enforcement of fines in these car parks, and how the issuing of permits is managed within these car parks.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Can I just get a general nod from people that people are aware of what's being moved as the amendment? Yep. Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. And I don't really want to open a Pandora's box, but the whole probably fundamental part of this issue is that these relationships between council and private entities and privately owned land car parks has opened a little bit of a Pandora's box, and that's why the Mayor has been in a rather unique position to need to leave the chair to come and move a motion to get some answers. And while the Mayor had some questions about Niddry Central, I think it brings up a much broader question about where we are enforcing and managing parking on privately owned land, or as I believe we do on state government owned land as well. We need to, as part of this report, look at a few things. One is if it actually is community expectation that we are enforcing parking on private land. I also think we need to look at the revenue that we're reaping, and obviously that provides an important investment into our city, but whether or not those parking enforcement should be better resourced to the parking should be better resourced to on-road or council-owned car parking. I want to get an understanding of how these relationships are established, how they're set up, what the terms of agreement are, whether or not the investment in parking technology, such as the cameras, is the onus is on either the owner of the car park or council, and then obviously, like we have seen on the current affair earlier this year, the risk that then presents to us as a council if we are ultimately the one that's dishing out the fine when it's not our land. I'm curious to know what the excuse me, how this relationship between council and privately owned car parks is signed, or how users of these car parks are made aware that is not actually a council-owned car park. You'll know there's been a considerable amount of news coverage about privately owned car parks such as Care Park and how they issue fines, but they're not actually parking fines. They're made to look like them, but they're not legally enforceable under the Road Act. Now, do the fines we issue within these privately owned car parks, I take it they're enforceable under the Roads Act, and we still escalate them to Fines Victoria, but again, different rules for different privately owned car parks depending on whether or not they've got a relationship with council or not, again, is opening this Pandora's box that I think we do as councillors need to be across, and users of the car parks need to be across. The final point I'll put in there is a really important one, because we even in very recent email correspondence that I've read since returning from abroad, it's a very council issuing permits to commercial entities is a very it's a very hot topic, and the general rule of thumb under our parking permit policy is that commercial entities are not entitled to parking permits. Now, how does that work if it is a privately owned car park, yet under council's responsibility? Are the commercial entities then entitled to permits, and then is that somewhat an uneven playing field or not equitable when you're looking at other council car parks where we do not issue permits or even permits for commercial entities to park on the road? These are just some questions that have popped into my head in the past 10 minutes listening to the Mayor move the motion, and just some general questions I have. And I take it there may be some other questions that other councillors have, or maybe you're happy with the agreements and you don't see an issue with it, and then feel free to vote this down. But I think that if that current affair story showed anything, there were a lot of unknown questions unknown answers, and there were a lot of questions, and not many of them could be answered at the time. And now, however many months we are down the track, we've still got questions, and considerable questions, that the Mayor is vacating the chair. So I'm just keen on seeing some answers and getting a broader understanding. Maybe it's something that we actually do more of. Maybe it's something that we don't do because it's not core business that we worry about who's parking in private car parks. But I'll leave that to the report. I just want to get a report back to get a broader understanding of where we're at. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm happy to support a report into looking into this, but I personally don't have an issue with how council is operating this to date, from what I've seen anyway. For example, the old Bounty site in North Essendon, I know that they were desperate. They were desperate for council's help a number of years ago, and that's because their parking was flooded with people going to the shops, also right next to Lincolnshire Arms Hotel. Their car park was flooded from people who weren't actually visiting the actual supermarket and going elsewhere. So they were desperate for council's help. They saw council's approach to having us look after effectively the car parking in the area, the timed car parking, us by patrolling the area and all the rest of it. It helped that supermarket immensely, and I know that for an absolute fact. So I'm certainly happy with the way, we as a council approach this to date, notwithstanding, Councillor Nation's put in a number of questions there. I don't think there's any harm in us understanding how it all works, and there's no problems with that. But, this amendment shouldn't take away from the fact of the main motion, I suppose, and obviously the Mayor has experienced and has heard directly from the traders and the visitors to the centre at Niddry Central Shopping Centre, and obviously there's issues. And yeah, there was a current affair story a little while ago, but I think I'm 100% sure it was found that was not council's fault at all. I'm happy to be corrected on that, but I'm pretty 100% sure that it was not council's fault, and it was, it wasn't council's fault at the time. So obviously there's teething problems in these things, I guess, too, and the licence plate camera recognition technology is something I don't think that we've got anywhere other than this shopping centre. So maybe that's, obviously this motion is requesting a look into all of that. So, yeah, I'm happy with having some advice on what's happened, particularly at Niddry Central, but also the extra points where councillors can become more aware of how all these agreements and all the rest of it happen and are formulated. It's not a bad thing. At the end of the day, fines are probably the one thing that it's the first thing anybody says to us as soon as they find out we're a councillor. Parking and fines is the first thing anyone ever mentions. So I'm happy to support both of these motions effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Nation for the amendment. I'm more than happy to support it, and I also appreciate the thought of essentially a separate report due to some of the time urgencies with my original motion that I'll speak to in closing. I think for myself, I'm broadly comfortable with council enforcing some of these car parks with the consent and the support of the owners and local businesses around them. As I'll talk about in closing, some of that hasn't been really upheld or meet those requirements with the substantive. But in speaking to the amendment, it's really going to be a growing issue over the coming years where, as Councillor Sharp touched on, there are significant private car parks along major transport routes. And we know that if these weren't enforced, people would be parking there, catching the tram, catching the train all day and bringing not a dollar and not a cent into our central business districts. So I think where we can, I am broadly supportive of us working with traders, working with landowners to enforce parking, where it's in the interest of bringing dollars into our community and into our businesses, but also keeping a flow of traffic for pensioners who are coming in, and that's really been a significant part of feedback for myself, and I'm sure the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sypek, and councillors across all of Moonee Valley really, where quite often we might have a 1 or 2 hour parking limit, and sometimes that's not enough for some of our older members of the community who might go get their hair done, touched by multiple businesses and bring a lot of money into our local economy. I think as well, generally my rule with these things is that if you don't hear about it, generally no news is good news, and I think the fact that councillors weren't aware of all the car parks that we enforce probably means that we're mostly hitting the mark on this. As I'll talk about in closing though, I think there are some exceptions to it. In terms of enforceability, I'm very comfortable having done a bit of background on my motion as to some of the questions that Councillor Nation raises, and I'm more than comfortable and happy when that report comes back, because I think it is always prudent for us to be reviewing our practices and always challenging ourselves in terms of our processes that we sometimes could take for granted. So thank you for the amendment, Councillor Nation.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Happy to support the amendment. I don't know much about these relationships, and so really keen to learn more about it. I have just jumped on Consumer Affairs Victoria website and learned at the outset that private car park operators cannot issue parking fines or infringements, and these are only issued by an authorised government body. Operators must issue breach of contract notices, which are obviously much more difficult, or a different way of then disputing those. It's through VCAT and much more costly. So I've learnt something tonight in this debate and some quick research, and it obviously explains why we are sought. I imagine that those relationships are sought by private car park operators because it creates an easier situation for everybody. So happy to continue to learn more about this, and make sure it's working well for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this amendment? No, I don't believe there was any dissent to the amendment, so I will put the amendment only to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. So that amendment will now form part of the substantive, and we'll go back to the substantive. We have had Mayor Tyson, Councillor Sypek and Councillor Nation speak on the substantive. Would any other councillor like to speak on the substantive? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll just very briefly say, in speaking now to the whole motion, very happy to receive a report back. I share, there's been a lot of comments around whether or not what the benefits to council and the community are, and I think that the Mayor's really, in his motion and also in speaking to the amendment that's passed, talked about you know, that how we can help our business precincts by enforcing these, by getting the, you know, parking turnover that we require to make these really thriving business areas. So I agree that it's great for us to know more about it, to make sure that we're doing everything we need to protect council's reputation if there are issues, like the ones that have been brought to the attention through this motion, but you know, I don't really have concerns fundamentally about enforcing parking restrictions on private land, because I think that through the benefit that it brings to the business areas and to our community, I think that's, you know, something council can be supporting. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor on the substantive? No. There was some dissent prior to the amendment, so Councillor Mayor Tyson, if you would like to close.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, thank you, councillors, for an interesting conversation. This is something that I really haven't taken lightly in terms of moving this, and as Councillor Nation pointed out, it is quite unusual for a mayor to vacate the chair for a notice of motion. As some of the debate has sort of touched on, so point D is that the report should examine the option of terminating the agreement and its implications. This is an option that I don't bring lightly to the chamber. It's not something I want, and I think it will be in a bad situation, really, and a bad outcome for everyone involved. But fundamentally, without tinkering around the edges of this agreement, where the community, our businesses and employees are crying out for very minor changes of a 3-hour parking limit, ceasing enforcement in the evening in the interest of safety for employees and young women and men, and the majority of our traders receiving appropriate parking, able to park in their premises. I think this is a very minor request in the grand scheme of things. And fundamentally, this is absolutely minor. But I think that having received so much feedback from our community that there does need to be change. I've been working on this and speaking to dozens, if not over 100 community members, employees and traders over the last few months. I don't bring this lightly. However, fundamentally, if nothing changes, then we'll have to examine option B of terminating the agreement. Thanks.
Thank you. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. I will now vacate the chair for the Mayor to step back in.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for taking the chair for that motion. We now move on to item 11, urgent business. Councillors, is there any urgent business? If not, we move on to item 12, confidential reports, and we have one report listed on the agenda this evening.
Mayor, as I've got a material conflict, I will step out of the room at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne.
As previously disclosed.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillors, I need a mover and seconder that Council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss item 12.1, response to notice of motion 2023/05, property matters Keilor East, in parentheses, as it is considered confidential under the terms of Section 3.1. A, Council business information being information that would prejudice the Council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. C, land use planning information being information that if prematurely released is likely to encourage speculation in land values. And E, legal privileged information being information to which legal professional privilege or client legal privilege applies. As the report contains commercial and legal privileged information on land and property matters. Moved, Councillor Sypek. Seconded, Councillor Hodgson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. At this point in the evening, we will close the meeting to the public. Thank you to everyone in the gallery who has joined us, as well as at home on the live stream, and we'll see you in a fortnight. I close the meeting to the public at 8:07 p.m. Thanks.